recording on June 20th, 2018 from the original Wahlburgers location in the Hingham Shipyard in Hingham, Massachusetts, founded 1635. Hometown Podcast presents Bob Ryan's Boston Podcast. Christopher Gasper, World Cup, yes, no, or maybe?
Yes.
Good.
Yes,
Thank
World
you.
Cup. I'm a World Cup fan, but it is a little strange. I know people here are focused on the fact that the United States is not participating in the World Cup, but it's an interesting World Cup in that some traditional powers, teams you would want to watch, Italy, Netherlands, they're not in this World Cup either. So this is a little bit of the upstart World Cup, and I would not be surprised if that theme goes all the way through, Bob, and maybe you end up with, it's not Germany winning it, it's not Brazil winning it, it's not Argentina winning it. Maybe it's Belgium.
Well, chic favorite among the aficionados, Belgium gets mentioned quite frequently, and they've got this is probably their time. But I think it's gotten off to a tremendous start. I think the first week has been wonderful.
Well, Ronaldo, I mean,
and
the hat trick.
Ronaldo starts off with the hat trick.
Spain.
And then, of course, we had the great juxtaposition of Ronaldo making his penalty shot and Messi missing his.
Yes.
You know, our Argentina, you know, with this horrible tie, the Germany losing to Mexico, you know, who, by the way, it's certainly a possibility to go very deep.
Absolutely. No, it looks like they're set up to make a deep run, and that they did not play scared football against Germany. I mean, they went at them. They took it to the Germans, and they got the best of them and were able to win that match.
Now, Spain, this whole story, for people who don't know, can we possibly give an analogy to what the Spain coaching situation was? Would we be firing the coach 2 days before the Super Bowl or before the AFC Championship game or something like that, right?
Firing your manager right before the World Series.
Yeah. I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
And the reason is because he took the Real Madrid job.
Yes. Yeah.
But I don't get the connection. Can you explain that to me? Why that's such a heinous thing?
I'll be honest with you. I can't explain it but I think it's just one of those things where when people have these, it's not. We think of it like so with the Olympics, right? Mike Krzyzewski can be the coach of Duke, and then when it's the Summer Olympics time, he just takes over USA basketball, and there's qualifying stuff in other summers. But the way that these jobs are thought of at the highest level, that's your full-time job. If you're coach of a national team, that's your job. Like, somebody's not coach of Real Madrid and then just shows up in the summer of the World Cup and says, yeah, I'm coaching this too. That's your full-time job. So I think they felt like he had his eye on something else and maybe was not fully, committed. I mean, let's be honest. That team's so talented, though. I mean, you or I could be the manager. I think that's part of it,
I saw some illusion somewhere about the idea of how many Barca players are on that team, too.
Yeah.
And he's the Real Madrid and Barca and all this, major hits.
Well, that's the rivalry.
And
it's not just I mean, it's, Barcelona, Madrid, we don't have to get into the history with going back, years and years and years. But that's also a cultural rivalry. I mean, that's a huge cultural, Catalan versus the seat of government.
Well,
at this
point in history, right? It's never been more pointed in like 50 years of the World Cups with the whole political situation in Catalan.
Absolutely, and
they're,
they're still in a situation where they're talking about being in a position to separate themselves from Spain, independence from Spain. So I think you can't discount sort of the cultural implications there for that club. But the reality is they're not doing this. Like, that's the thing, Bob. If they're Iceland, they're not doing this. Like, you can do this when you're Spain and your team is so talented that it doesn't really matter who the manager is.
Now, speaking of lovable Iceland and all their 330,000 people, done a little research myself, and I'm sure you have too. People have to understand they have a lot of legit players. Most of their players play seriously in Europe. And I read something very interesting about them, I don't know which is that they have taken their small size country as a virtue, and where they've done that is the way they develop players is they identify who their best coaches are and they make them teach the 6-year-olds, and that's how you wind up with the head coach of the national team being a dentist.
Which is a great story.
A full-time dentist. And your goalkeeper, that's another story, who's a film producer. But the coaching thing, it's very interesting. This isn't a lark. This isn't a bunch of firemen and the carpenters. They're serious players in a country that has taken this thing very seriously and have achieved as a result.
Yeah, and it's a great story, and I think that their development model would be something. That's still the biggest issue in U.S. soccer, is being able to develop players that at the highest level play with pace, play with the technical skill required, that are able to think the game at a high level. Like, we have the athletes, when it comes down to international soccer, our guys can run all day long. I mean, somebody like DeAndre Yedlin for the U.S. team, you're not going to find many guys that are better athletes or are faster, but it comes down to being able to think the game and being able to play with pace. This reminds me of a funny story, actually. I want to tie it back to Bill Belichick.
Go ahead.
So in 2008, we were out on the West Coast. The Patriots had this setup where they had back-to-back road games on the West Coast, and they decided that they were going to go out there between those games. This actually happened twice that year where they had back-to-back road games. So we're in Santa Clara, California, and some of us had been slated to stay at the team hotel by accident. The team got wind of this, wasn't thrilled with it. They asked us to move, so we did. We moved to another hotel.
Hope it was a Marriott.
Yes, it was. Okay. We got the points, Bob. Don't worry.
Okay,
we got the Marriott points.
It
was from one Marriott.
I mean, that would come under the category of cruel and inhuman punishment. Okay, good.
But some of us felt like, for doing the team a solid, that we should get something too. And so we got a dinner with Bill. At a Mexican restaurant. Now, there were a couple of problems with this dinner, and I'll get to the point with soccer in a moment. Just oblige me here, indulge me here. So, one, we meet with Scott Pioli, former vice president of player personnel for the Patriots that day. He says, well, I hear you guys are having dinner with Bill. Where are you going? We tell him it's a Mexican restaurant. He goes, oh, that's not good. He's like, Bill doesn't really like ethnic food. so this is a bad sign. So, Bill shows up at the dinner, didn't touch any of the food. Didn't touch so much as a nacho, but was great. He told great stories. This was not the Bill Belichick at the podium. This
not
was
even chips and salsa, huh?
He wouldn't touch it.
Wow.
But he was relaxed. He told some great stories about Cleveland and the dog pound. Just funny, witty, engaging. Yeah. Not the guy you see at the podium.
The guy that we hear, the people.
But somehow the subject of soccer comes up, and Bill asks who at the table likes soccer. So I raise my hand, and the Bill says, what do you like about soccer? And I said, well, there's a lot of strategy. And he goes, yeah, put the ball in the blank net. And that was his take on soccer. Put the ball in the blank net. To which I was proud of myself at the time for saying this, because to which I responded without really thinking, no, sometimes you have to give some ground to gain some ground in terms of just the strategy of it all. And I wasn't just talking about the soccer. I was talking about media relations as well. But Bill Belichick at the time, maybe he has changed. And we all know he's a big lacrosse fan.
God, yes.
But this guy, brilliant guy, loves history and all that other stuff. At the time, this is 2008, did not appreciate the brilliance and the strategy of soccer. He just thought it was like you just put the ball in the net.
Kickball.
Pretty much, yeah.
Grade school kickball,
That's pretty
right?
much what he thought it was, yeah.
I got to throw up a country for you, England, and we all know that the Brits last won in '66, and they invented the game, and they're very proprietary to the game, and they feel the Premiership is the best league in the world, which it probably is, even though it's because
populated by players from all over the world.
by players over there. But and they've cycled through coaches, and they finally gone back. They got a Brit. They don't usually have a Brit coach, Gareth Southgate.
Yeah,
they finally got a Brit coach.
They do. I have to say, though, that is one of the worst jobs, I think, in international soccer, because it's one of those, and we've all seen this in sports here, right? When you have a franchise with a fan base that has expectations that don't match reality, that is England. I think in a lot of ways.
How many cities can we?
Go ahead.
I'll tell you one in North America that dwarfs them all, Montreal.
Yes, that's exactly. Yeah.
The Les Habitants.
They feel like they should win the Stanley Cup every year.
No one here. People think the Red Sox or the Yankees are scrutinized, or whatever, or name your football, passionate community. The Redskins, for example, Les Habitants, right? Nothing compares to that. No. That's the toughest job in North America.
No, and that's a great analogy for what the England job is like. So it's pretty much like, unless you win the whole thing, and you probably don't have the talent to win the whole thing, you failed.
I got one question. Did you see their game, against?
I only saw the highlights with Harry Kane.
I'm not a soccer expert, but how do you leave the great goal scorer on the team unmarked, as we say, on the header on the corner kick?
Funny things can happen on those corner kicks, and it's like basketball. Like, if you have in basketball pick and roll and you have a switch and there's a miscommunication, that's what happens, and that's what the great players do. They find the space.